Hey, what's shaking, Warfighter Nation? Ron here with Warfighter Ranch and Isaiah 6:8. Today we're going to bring you something a little different.
Spent 12 years in the Army Fire Service. Met a lot of people, saw a lot of lives changed. Some for the better, some for the worse.
Super 7,
All
we're
of them
cleared on at this time.
amazing.
And this is the story of my Christmas miracle. October through December has always been a traditionally tough season for me. The toughest season of the year, in fact. My deployments kept me away from CONUS during the Christmas season on 3 different occasions, and on each occasion an indelible memory was seared into my soul, one for each of the months of October, November, and December. It usually sneaks up on me on the last day of September or sometimes the first day of October, but then my triggers surrounding Mogadishu avail themselves pretty freely. And if nothing else, social media is always there to be a constant reminder. That's October, and into the season of hope we go. November brings us to the celebration of giving thanks. However, again, for many years, Thanksgiving Day used to remind me of the day I lost a soldier in Ramadi. He wasn't exactly mine, but he was tasked out to me for a couple of weeks as a guard on the main gate of Camp Junction City. Thanksgiving. That was the day a young kid from 1-5, a young artilleryman fresh out of AIT, lost all hope and fell to his own demons just prior to our assigned meeting time. As I slung my rifle and my gear over my shoulder heading out towards the gate that day, I distinctly remember hearing a crack ring through the air. It was a single shot, and everyone pretty much blew it off as an accidental discharge, as they were fairly common. This was no accident. As a father and as a leader, I've always sympathized with his family, knowing full well they will never look at that day the same ever again. Neither did I for decades. But now, I have to. And before the leftovers are even cooled off in their Tupperware containers and tucked away in the fridge, we're already shooting headfirst into the Christmas season like a missile. While most Americans are focused on Black Friday sales and Christmas lists, that's when December goes into a state of suspended animation for me. Kosovo was my second tour. Probably the one I speak the least about. I'm not really sure why, because it was a monumental time during my career. As a matter of fact, it was the crown jewel. I'd been given one of the 4 remaining firefighting detachments left in the Army. And while they're all incredible in their own way, I was especially proud to be leading the team from Bragg, the 89th Engineer Detachment. We were the only airborne military firefighters on jump status on the planet. So I get a phone call one day from our S2 NCOIC, a bristly master sergeant who stood in back of our PT formation with a lit cigarette in his mouth every morning. Ah, the late 90s. What a great time to serve. He informed me that we were going to the war-torn country of Kosovo in support of Operation Joint Guardian. As a part of Task Force Falcon, we'd be looking at another evil dictator, Slobodan Milosevic, after he committed genocide throughout Kosovo, Albania, and Macedonia. Most people can't really relate to that sort of thing, so I tell them to think of behind enemy lines. Yeah, think of that. The US and other NATO forces had bombarded the country with bombing run after bombing run for months on end. There was barely a building left standing that didn't have some sort of war shrapnel tagging it. Christmas Eve came, and I had housed my Engine 89 in a separate tent so that we could watch It's a Wonderful Life in our heated bay. We begged, borrowed, and stole chairs from any and everywhere we could find and ordered snacks from the Brown and Root DFAC in the form of meat and cheese trays and hot soup and coffee. Best we could do. We hosted it as an event for all of Camp Bondsteel, And although dozens of soldiers came in and out throughout the night, only one stayed true till the very end. The brigade commander, Colonel Bob McClure, stuck it out with me until the last credit rolled. Apparently he was a sucker for Jimmy Stewart as well. And as the end credits finished, I glanced over at him and watched as a single tear fell down his cheek. Regardless of rank, we really were Joes away from home at Christmas. It was getting close to midnight, and as it had been a mostly silent night, I was seriously thinking about hitting the rack. I was ready to put this Christmas in the books when I got a call from the TOC via our alarm room. A runner came down to the tent and informed me that there was a carpet store fire in downtown Eurosavik, just off camp. Colonel McClure and I walked up to the TOC, where we were met by the G3 and then Brigadier General Sanchez. He said, "Chief, we've got a mission. There's a carpet store on fire downtown, and it would be a really nice gesture of goodwill if we made the attempt to try and put it out. What do you think?" What did I think? Well, at this point, I was on the heels of a failed marriage, a flailing career, and an almost utter and blatant disregard for my own life. I may have been a ticking time bomb, but I wasn't completely stupid. Still, I had few filters. I said, "I think it's an ambush, sir. It's a setup. The buildings downtown are so close to one another that it's bound to get out of control if somebody doesn't do something. However, our only way in is an alleyway that has one way in and one way out." I was well aware that the carpet store would be a complete loss, but I also understood what the command was trying to do. There wasn't any semblance of safe from any angle, but he really wanted us to go. It wasn't a request. But he did send us out there with a QRF to watch our back as we headed downtown and then down that alleyway. When you take a fire engine down an alley, you can barely get the doors open to get out of the vehicle. It was that narrow, and as I looked back, my worst fear was beginning to unfold right in front of me. I saw the locals building barricades and setting tires on fire at the end of the alley behind us. It was like having a flashback from Mogadishu in real time while actively inside another combat zone, inside a fire, out in sector that would soon turn into a firefight. It was everything that I'd ever hoped for, every test imaginable all at once. It was a nightmare. And if it were not for that young lieutenant and his brave band of 5 soldiers on his QRF, I really don't know how we would have ever got out of there. Not alive, anyway. We had more QRF members than we had firefighters. I only took my 2 guys from Bragg out with me that night. We were in the process of beginning to deactivate when the mission came down. So I suggested that we augment the 3 of us with some of the members of the 114th Engineer Detachment, my alma mater, and first assignment out of Fort Campbell. And we had just done a change of responsibility ceremony between our team and the team at Fort Leonard Wood, and the team from Drum was already holding fast at Camp Monteith. We were spread so thin as a branch it was ridiculous. Every deployable firefighter in the MOS, in the career field, was either deployed or redeploying at the same time. The original mission fell to us. So I had to make the decision to take just our guys out, so that if in fact there was a catastrophic event of any kind, for some reason we wouldn't lose 50% of the deployable teams in the Army's inventory in one night. I can't begin to tell you the weight of that decision that night, but God was definitely watching over us. I didn't send any of the men into the building. I simply went up to the huge plate glass window the size of a door and butt-stroked it with my rifle until it disappeared. I had no firefighting gear on, no body armor, nothing. Nothing but BDUs, my soft cap, and my rifle. I thought of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in that furnace. I thought of Daniel in that lion's den. I thought about Joseph, abandoned and left for dead by his brothers. In a worldly sense, they were all alone. But in reality, they weren't. He was there with each of them, and he was there with me. He never left me alone. As I stepped over the bottom of the window pane, my green jungle boot was met with a soft surface. A body. It was presumably the owners, killed and used to have their place set ablaze in order to lure the Americans out on Christmas Eve. Cold War tactics of the older regimes were particularly brutal in the former Soviet bloc countries. People disappear all the time there. They train with live nerve agent, and some of their TTPs are truly barbaric. Once I was inside the building and the tires were lit, they opened fire on us from I don't know how many different directions. I'll never be able to say enough about that young lieutenant, though. I never got his name, but I sure do wish I could shake his hand and give him a hug to this day. Some lieutenants are useful. Thankfully, the enemy did not plan for a sustained attack, and when it was over, the would-be insurgents simply disappeared into the night. And once again, the city fell silent. We lived. We survived. And God even allowed us to save a small mom and pop shop next door to the carpet shop, quite by accident. Or so we thought. The fire had blown out the window on that side of the store, burning all the paper products that were located on the shelf there. But because we saved the rest of the store, they thanked us with these big 1-liter bottles of icy cold Coca-Cola with the labels written in Serbian. God has blessed me with the gift of time and years to discern this from my past. I just think it's incredibly ingenious how God can travel back through time and use all those tears, all of that heartache, all of that pain, and use all of it for His glory. He still is. This season used to be a lot tougher for me, but that is diminishing. I've noticed over the years that as my walk with faith grows closer to my risen Savior, Jesus, the excitement of the oncoming celebration of His birth far outweighs the trauma of my past. Just remember, it's not about the fire you're in. It's about who's in the fire with you.
Smoke Jumper 7. Roger that. Next mission, time now.